This morning we are with Todd Eilers, founder of Eilers and Krejcik Gaming and managing partner of that firm. And Todd, I'm not sure I even need to introduce you. You have created such a role for yourself in the gaming industry as probably the leading firm in studying and analyzing trends in gaming technology, as well as more recently some of your partners that you've brought in who do social gaming and sports betting and allied areas. Your expertise is slot trends. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the major trends that you see today?
Sure. Well, thanks again, Frank, for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for the kind words. Sure. So at Eilers and Krejcik, we are divided along three verticals, and I head up one of the three, which is the land-based gaming equipment sector. And so a lot of the things that we're seeing in the slot sector, we just did a presentation yesterday, an industry overview. So I'll share some of the things that we highlighted in that presentation, some of which are probably not going to be all that new, but some of the key trends obviously are curve format slot machines. That started several years back when Bally first introduced the first curve format slot to the industry, and Aristocrat followed with their version of that, and now we're on the second and third generations of curve slot format machines, and I think every vendor probably is going to have one of those by this year. We in our presentation, we actually pulled some numbers from some of our internal proprietary data in our database. We estimate that roughly 9% of the slot floor in North America right now has a curved slot machine, and we do expect that percentage to increase going forward, not decrease. Several other trends would be the increase of Asian-themed content as well, and that's been a trend that's, again, similar to curve format, has been ongoing for several years and has really almost increased recently over the last couple, but we estimate roughly 8 to 9% of casino floors for Asian-themed content. That's what represents the floor, and we also expect that trend to continue as well. And one interesting thing to add to that is really not tailored just solely for the Asian demographic, but really the Asian-themed content really applies to a much broader demographic. And so that's really an interesting trend to see as well. Some other things to highlight, or that we did highlight in the presentation, ASPs for the industry, for the suppliers, very healthy.
Average selling price.
Average selling prices. Sorry, I'm using my industry terminology a little too much here. Thanks, Frank. But that's a trend that's been ongoing for the past 10, 15 years. ASPs continue to rise as suppliers add more bells and whistles to their machines. But on the flip side, the average fee per day that vendors generate from leased and participation games actually has been steadily declining. Now, a lot of that's mix driven with the increase in non-premium style recurring revenue games, maybe a reduction in the number of WAPs, or wide area progressive games out there. But that's kind of an interesting dynamic, one very positive trend, one not so positive but not necessarily negative trend that we're seeing in the space.
There's been a love-hate relationship between the casinos and the supplier companies in the case of recurring revenue. The casinos don't want to pay 20%, and we know that the other companies say, the suppliers say, well, we're investing all this money and taking all this risk, and it's not costing you anything to give it a try. Do you think some of this decline in the price per recurring revenue unit is reflective of coming to an accommodation between casinos and suppliers?
Yeah, I think so. There's some of that. I think that certainly when you're going out and securing a high-end brand on the supplier end and bringing that game and putting a lot of money into the game on top of that brand, I think the WAP pricing model works in those limited circumstances, but I think the suppliers probably obviously would like to have a bigger pool of those games, and operators would like to have a smaller pool, and so yeah, I think you're seeing some of that. I think you also are seeing the emergence of some non-Big Four or non-Big Three vendors entering the premium lease space, like your Everys, your AGS, your Incredible Technologies, those sorts of companies, really targeting kind of the low to mid end of that premium sector, kind of the non-WAP sector, and offering really competitive pricing as well. And so I think that's also had a bit of a downward pressure on the fees.
A few years ago, when IGT dominated the industry and it had 65-70% of North America slot machines, for example, there was a feeling that there just wasn't enough room for everybody else, that the remaining competitors had to bear all the costs of research and development and all the other costs associated with competing with IGT, and yet fight for that small slice of the pie. And then following that, we had a consolidation. And so now it became, the thought was, well, gee, now you've got IGT and you've got Scientific Games, and there's really nothing left for anybody else, so this is it. And yet we have had the emergence, as you've just mentioned, of these smaller players, whether it was Konami earlier on, and now more recently AGS and Incredible and Every. How do you think this competitive landscape plays out over the next 2 or 3 years? Is there another round of consolidation, or do we have new guys coming in who can stand on their own for a good long time?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting dynamic. You know, I would have never thought that it'd be as competitive as it is right now with the round of consolidation that we did have. But it just goes to show you, I mean, if you hire the right people and you got the right management team and developers, and you can develop a product or two that resonate with customers, casino operators will put it on the floor. I mean, the toughest part, obviously, is getting licensed and getting the company set up in that way. I mean, it takes a lot of time and it's very expensive, and obviously to develop games, it costs a lot of money. So you got to have a parent company or an owner who has the financial resources to allow that to happen over several years and continue to reinvest. I think it's really impressive what some of these smaller companies have done, considering how much larger their competitors are. I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk to slot directors, they want more competition. They want all of the vendors to be healthy. They want good, healthy competition because it's better for them. And if everyone has the same games on the floor, it's going to be the same slot experience. So everyone's always interested in trying a new vendor, trying to see if they can uncover that newest trend or newest game before their competitors, and capitalize on that.
Right, and not to draw this out, but I mentioned the companies I did and that you mentioned, but you also got a Ruse who's looking like they're reviving. You've got Gaming Arts, a bingo company that's now entering the space with a lot of enthusiasm, if not, and of course Aristocrat has just had such a dynamic run over the last few years. One of the words that we heard over and over and over again the past couple of years is skill-based gaming. Is skill-based like some of the other buzzwords that we've heard over the past decade or two that takes the imagination for a year or two and then kind of recedes?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I think like most industries, including the gaming industry, any sort of new technology or anything like that comes about, there's a lot of press and a lot of excitement, and typically, the first generation of games don't quite live up to those expectations, and then all the press and news and media kind of dies down, and then you really start to get to work on the product, and I think what we've seen right now with some of the companies like the Gamecos and the Gamblets and some of those companies that are targeting that market. They're now on versions 2 or generations 2 and 3 of their games. The product's getting better. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they have in the booths this year. What we've seen out there in the market right now is the games do okay, but if you're comparing them to a slot machine, they might not necessarily do similar type performance. But on the flip side, you have to ask yourself, while it might not be doing the same win per day numbers, is it bringing in a new customer? Is it incremental revenue? And that's really the question. I think there is some data out there that would suggest there is some level of that. How much, I don't know. I think what that means is if you're a casino with enough floor space and the ability to carve out a section on your floor for these games, try to cultivate a new player, I think it might make sense. For a casino that's restricted in terms of space, and you got to maximize every ounce of floor space, it's probably not the best thing for you to do right now. So it's an interesting time for that product. I think there's certainly an opportunity there, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what they have on display this year.
Our two organizations, Eilers, Krejcik, and Fantini, for a number of years now have co-published a quarterly slot survey, which has become by far the industry standard and continues to grow. This year, we've launched a new product that kind of tries to answer that eternal question of how much does that machine earn? Tell us about this new project.
Sure. So Frank's talking about our new central game performance database, which is an offshoot of our slot survey, which nowadays we're tracking about 500,000 slot machines worldwide. Vast majority of that's North America, US and Canada. The central database, the slot survey is very supplier focused. How many games did you buy from supplier X, Y, and Z? How much are you going to buy going forward? Those are the sorts of questions we ask in the slot survey. So very supplier focused. The game performance database is very game centric, obviously, hence the name. And this is where casino operators or participants are uploading data on all the games on their floor. We're not asking for too sensitive of information. We're not asking for whole percentages or actual win or anything like that. We're just simply asking for a list of the games, the relative performance or indexing versus house and zone. So then we take all that data. Surprisingly, everyone names the same games, a lot of different names, so it's a lot of work on our end to kind of create a standard naming convention for the game names and cabinets. But we do combine all that together, and then we provide the ability to run various ranking reports with various filters. So if you wanted to know what the top 25 low denom video reel slot machines are in the Northeast, you could run those filters and it would populate the top games for you. And there's a lot of other things you can do, but that's just one example.
And one of the key features of this is, and it's a two-tier service, and if you subscribe to the higher tier, you actually get access to the database so that your analytics folks can crunch their own numbers and do their own analyses.
Yeah, absolutely. So we write research. So obviously one of the things we do, as Frank mentioned, is we will publish a monthly game performance report. We've been doing, I think we've done 6 or 7 of those now. We'll continue to do that. But if you are a participant in the database, you do have access to the database to run your own custom reports and analysis. We also provide a regional comparison report. So if you're a casino operator and you want to compare your property and benchmark it to your competition, let's say you're in California and you want to compare a California casino to the broader California or just Southern California market, you could do that. You could see, what are the top 10 games that your competitors have that you don't have, and maybe you should have one or two of those games. So those are the sorts of things that you can do. You can extract data, as you mentioned, layer it on your own analytical programs internally. There's really a lot you can do with it. We're very excited about it. Right now, I think we have 75,000 slots we're tracking in the first year, and we're on pace to get to probably around 100,000 slots by the end of the year.
Okay. Well, we've touched upon a lot of topics in a very short period of time. Anything else that we should discuss, Todd?
No, I mean, I think just with respect to our organization, some of the other areas that we spend a lot of time on are in the digital and interactive and now sports betting and emerging markets. And so we spend a lot of time, publish a lot of reports. So to the extent anyone's interested in similar level of data and trends, we do the same thing for those verticals. And I think that the team does a great job. So shameless pitch for my other the partners business lines.
And there's probably a website where people can go and learn more about those areas.
If you ekgamingllc.com, and you can find out all the information you need.
Great.
Thanks, Frank.
Todd, thank you.
Appreciate it.